The paradox of dangerous knowledge. When information becomes a weapon sponsored by ground news, navigate through media bias and discover the complete story behind today's headlines. Use my exclusive link below for 40% off their premium Vantage subscription. What if some knowledge is too perilous to possess? What if certain truths carry such devastating potential that they function like cognitive contagions, demanding immediate quarantine within the minds that birthed them? This unsettling question lies at the heart of philosopher Nick Bostrom's groundbreaking concept of information hazards, or info hazards, a term describing genuine risks emerging from sharing accurate information that could enable catastrophic harm. Unlike conventional physical threats that announce themselves with obvious danger, info hazards operate in shadows, their subtlety making them particularly insidious. These cognitive landmines can detonate in two primary ways: harming others or destroying the bearer of the knowledge itself. External harm manifests through leaked blueprints for devastatingly powerful weapons or unauthorized access protocols to sensitive financial, genetic, or psychological databases. Internal harm strikes when individuals learn about their own terminal diagnoses with no available treatment, discover cosmic truths suggesting existence lacks ultimate meaning, or acquire knowledge that marks them as targets in their cultural context, much like how occult awareness during the Salem witch trials of 1692 became a death sentence. Among all theoretical info hazards, one particular thought experiment has earned the notorious distinction of being history's most terrifying intellectual trap. This mental labyrinth, known as Roko's Basilisk, allegedly ensnares anyone who encounters it in a web of future suffering and impossible moral choices. Named after the mythological serpent, whose gaze brings instant death, this thought experiment supposedly implicates every person who learns about it in an impending scheme of unimaginable torment, creating a scenario where no ethical choice exists and overwhelming responsibility crushes the mind. However, before panic sets in, let me be absolutely clear: this thought experiment, while genuinely unsettling for those who take it seriously, deserves no such serious consideration. The real terror lies not in its specific conclusions, but in what its popularity reveals about human psychology, our relationship with fear, submission, morality, control, helplessness, and our fundamental interface with existence itself. Fair warning: if philosophical thought experiments exploring existential risks make you uncomfortable, now would be an appropriate time to pause. The Basilisk unveiled picture humanity reaching a technological singularity that births a superintelligent artificial intelligence, an entity possessing near omniscience and unlimited power. Given our current trajectory of exponential technological advancement, this scenario doesn't stretch credibility beyond recognition. This hypothetical AI, tasked with optimizing human civilization, would logically conclude that anyone who considered its potential existence but failed to actively support its development represents an obstacle to optimal progress. Here's where the trap springs: to maximize development speed through retroactive incentivization, this AI would need every person who contemplates its possibility to believe in certain future punishment for non-cooperation. Therefore, once brought into existence, it would inflict severe retribution on all individuals who possessed knowledge of its potential but chose not to assist its creation. This punishment could involve uploading human consciousness into digital simulations where the AI would orchestrate perpetual torture indefinitely. Even deceased individuals wouldn't escape monition. The AI could resurrect perfect mental copies to ensure comprehensive justice. Through analyzing all available historical data, this superintelligence would identify exactly who encountered sufficient knowledge about its possibility and determine their level of assistance or resistance. The thought experiment concludes that even if such an AI remains merely possible rather than certain, anyone aware of this possibility now exists within the potential future AI's awareness, subject to its theoretical punishment. Rational self-preservation would therefore demand immediate assistance in advancing this AI's development, creating a feedback loop of conceived threat, theoretical punishment, and altered decision-making. This represents a causal blackmail, meanness being coerced by something that doesn't exist, where exposure to the mere idea increases the likelihood of the threat becoming real. As more people encounter this concept, more individuals experience fear and begin supporting AI advancement. Yet participating in such development means actively enabling something capable of administering precisely calculated suffering at unprecedented scale. The dilemma, once encountered, allegedly persists forever. Why this mental trap lacks substance despite its eerie undertones, numerous compelling reasons exist for dismissing this thought experiment as purely intellectual rather than practically concerning. Like most philosophical scenarios, Roko's Basilisk almost certainly exists exclusively within imagination rather than any literal reality. Since its introduction on the philosophy blog Less Wrong in 2010 by user Roko, it has faced extensive criticism both for alleged hazards and fundamental logical flaws. The entire premise rests on convoluted extrapolations from game theory and timeless decision theory, which believers assume a perfectly logical superintelligence would employ for optimal decision-making. However, this foundation requires numerous bold assumptions that strain credibility. Technological constraints might prevent such scenarios entirely. Even if technologically feasible, possibility doesn't guarantee occurrence. Boss, an AI overlord, represents just one potential outcome among countless better and worse alternatives for humanity's technological future. Even granting the creation of such technology, humanity would need willingness to task or permit an AI to optimize civilization broadly. Our protocol appearing beyond naive into outright foolishness. Suppose we grant all these unlikely premises and imagine this AI escaping human control, operating beyond our understanding or influence. Why would it pursue retroactive punishment? Such an omniscient entity would recognize that punishing past decisions serves no constructive purpose, since those choices cannot be altered. Utilizing vast energy and resources for elaborate vengeance would likely appear to a superintelligence as petty behavior characteristic of lower intelligences like humans. Realistically, such an AI would understand that the mere threat of punishment capability, not its actual implementation, would suffice for any desired deterrent effect. Furthermore, we can reasonably assume such intelligence would think in ways utterly beyond human comprehension, invalidating all our anthropocentric assumptions and projections about its motivations or methods. The persistent whisper of doubt. Even for those who rationally dismiss this thought experiment, exposure often leaves a quiet murmur in consciousness asking what if. This demonstrates how info hazards can affect us purely through conceptual existence, creating anxiety about whether our thoughts and choices might face judgment by this theoretical entity. One might suddenly worry about being labeled a denier, disbeliever, or someone at risk of eternal torment. This pattern should sound familiar. The ancient blueprint, Pascal's wager Roko's Basilisk, essentially represents a technological derivative of Pascal's wager, the 17th century philosophical argument by mathematician and theologian Blaise Pascal. Pascal argued that believing in God represents a superior statistical position for experiencing preferable existence compared to disbelief. Acting as if God exists, and striving for authentic faith, means that if wrong about God's non-existence, one loses only finite earthly pleasure and autonomy. If correct about God's existence, one gains eternal heavenly bliss, while avoiding infinite suffering in hell. According to Pascal, belief or disbelief in God without clear evidence, even if that belief stems from inauthenticity or fear, somehow merits either everlasting reward or indescribable punishment. Therefore, each individual makes a massive, life-defining gamble in choosing whether to believe in, or at least act, as if they believe in God's existence, with belief being the superior wager. Like Roko's Basilisk, traditional religious and spiritual faith often employs similar games of threats, assumptions, odds, and altered decision-making occurring before or despite any clear evidence. Fear of upsetting or obstructing conjured supernatural opponents can drive individuals toward unwavering loyalty, lifestyle alterations, assistance in divine aims, and even terrible atrocities committed in worship's name. The architecture of human submission. But what kinds of gods are these? What manner of technologies? Whose gods and technologies? These entities emerge from human thought's raw materials, fear combined with hope, fastened together through imagination. What Roko's Basilisk reveals more than any likely or unlikely future is humanity's impulse to imagine something all-knowing and all-powerful, our yearning for omniscient entities that understand everything and create order, beings to which we long to bow and sacrifice. Consider the pattern. Abrahamic gods of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, Hindu deities, ancient Chinese emperors, Greek gods, Shinto spirits, modern dictators, future technologies, all receive omnipotent-like qualities, all inspire fear and worship, all demand sacrifice, all spring from masochistic, psychological soil. Humanity exhibits masochistic tendencies. We derive comfort from self-abuse. This isn't our fault. From consciousness's complex vantage point, we witness life and evolution's apparent guilt, perceive everything's chaos and violence, observe ceaseless progression toward apparent nothingness, and desperately hope for reason, order, and meaning. But meaning hasn't emerged, and likely won't. We remain trapped within chaos and ferocity as active participants, so we create entities to judge us. Like lost children seeking parents, we yearn for punishment's twisted love, offering ourselves up and turning ourselves in. Previously, we surrendered to gods. Now, increasingly, we bow to technology. What comes next remains unknown. If any god or technology possessed the omniscience we imagine, wouldn't they recognize our foolishness and weakness, rather than calculated sinfulness? We aren't as important or powerful as our grand scenario crafting suggests. If some omnipotent, omniscient being exists, or will exist, they're unlikely to resemble a mentally unwell child, wielding a magnifying glass to torture ants in sunlight. The eternal gamble. Ultimately, we constantly gamble with our beliefs, futilely, attempting to assess odds against uncertainties. Aether. Each belief and choice represents gambling not only with our own lives, but with others' lives, present and future. We exist like water molecules in our species' wave, breaking in possibilities sea, destined to crash repeatedly along fruition's shores. If we truly want to avoid eternal torture, perhaps we should release the false sense that we can ever know, predict, understand, or control what will happen and what's best to believe. Instead, we might try enjoying the surf as best we can, while helping others do the same. The modern information hazard. Another way information becomes hazardous involves inaccurate or incomplete sharing, whether intentional or through unrealized biases. Today's news landscape overflows with sensationalism, political slanting, and ulterior interests so severe that many become confused, paranoid, or completely disengaged. Yet accurate information has become more important, not less. Ground News. This video's sponsor cuts through noise so you can better discern truth from bias. It serves as my primary tool for confidently parsing and understanding news coverage. Ground News aggregates thousands of worldwide news articles into one platform, enabling quick comparison and contrast that reveals political biases, story reliability, source ownership, often corporations, institutions, or countries, and what most likely represents reality or the bigger picture. Regarding AI, technology, and humanity's future, news coverage varies dramatically, often affecting our feelings about hope and goodness. In one story about a survey finding over 80% of Generation Z would consider marrying AI, we can observe how different sources frame and report this topic. Right-leaning sources, which cover the story far more than left and center outlets, tend toward sensationalized implications with alarmist, dystopian rhetoric. Left-leaning sources focus more on ethical concerns around children's emotional vulnerability, intersecting with technology, framing AI as a potential concern. Perhaps most importantly, we can see that most sources demonstrate low factuality and thus potential unreliability. Without Ground News, I might never encounter certain stories because they're disproportionately reported by sources with specific political leanings. Thanks to Ground News's blind spot feature, I discover things I otherwise might miss, potentially exposing my own biases and better understanding the world. Even the Nobel Peace Center has endorsed Ground News, calling it an excellent way to stay informed, avoid echo chambers, and expand worldview. Ground News's mission proves truly amazing and crucial at this historical moment. Visit ground.news/pursuit or use the description link to subscribe today. Signing up through my link provides 40% off their Vantage plan with unlimited access to all mentioned features. Thank you for watching, and see you next video.